and I'll go over to here. That was the watch replay, so I'll have to go live podcasts. Okay, well, it's going somewhere, but I don't know. I don't know where it's going. Okay, yeah, I can see it there. Can you just speak
Yeah,
into
I can see the
yours?
word live, but I just don't know where.
Yeah, me neither. I have no idea. I can't see it anywhere popping up.
I can see it here, sort of like live.
Okay, okay. I think I got
Yeah,
it
I
now.
can see experimenting with new formats. Our thoughts on making digital work.
Yeah, okay.
I don't
I
know.
think it's good.
Yep.
I think it's good.
Nice.
Of course, all those things that I posted to the wrong place. Let me fix that. Let me fix that. All right, I'll turn that down. Oh geez, here, Mere Models Pod. I just want to go to my profile. Can you edit a post and you need premium to edit it
In
in Twitter. So I can
yes.
try
Yep.
with a better link. All right.
Oh, I forgot. I need to check in for my bloody flight.
I checked in already. Ha ha ha. What I need to check in is with Joey and make sure that he definitely does have the belts and ties.
I've got the belts.
Oh, you've got the belts? Okay.
I don't have the ties, but I've got your belt in my belt.
Okay, brilliant. Make sure you don't forget that.
Have you got all the details of where we're staying, by the way?
I know where we're staying, yes.
You do know? I don't even know that.
It's in the chat.
I got zero details.
It's in one of the chats.
I'll have to go and confirm then.
I can maybe reply to. I'll do it later.
Yeah, do it later. Don't do it right now.
Okay, sweet. You ready to rumble? I posted that. Could you just make sure you're recording on your end as well, please?
Yes, it is recording.
Like a separate audio is what I mean.
Yes.
Yep. Sweet. All right. I'm just checking mine. Check. Yep. That looks like it's coming through okay. And I'll go over to here and I'll click the button for us to hopefully start with the music. Let's see if it works or not. Music's intro live. Let me know if you can hear this or not. Because it struggled last time with
We all can be mortals.
Yep.
Okay, I can't.
We all can be mortals.
Welcome, Mere Mortals, to another episode of the Mere Mortals Musings. This is where your two favorite Mere Mortals, Kyron here,
And Juan here on the other side.
and we get together once a week live on a Wednesday, today being 23rd of August, 2023. And we talk about effective philosophy. We talk about something which is close to our hearts. We talk about something which we try and we have some knowledge about, perhaps that we can find something useful for you. And I have picked today's topic, so deep conversations with a lighthearted touch. And it was experimenting with new formats. So it was really about digital content creation. We've undergone some changes. Juan's tried out something new recently, so we'll get his thoughts on that. I've got some thoughts on kind of just general strategy of where I think observations I've noticed of creating things digitally for the last 3 or 4 years now, and we'll get into it. So I think we should start off one with your new thingy. I can't even remember what you've called it. What was your new fitness thing?
Honestly, there's sometimes as well that I forget what the hell I was calling it. The other day I was doing the third podcast and I was like, oh yeah, what would I call this? So I'm calling it Mere Mortals in Motion. So it's broad enough that motion will mean maybe handstands, running, lifting, whatever type of fitness. I didn't want to call it fitness though in particular, because I was like, well, what if motion then pertains to something else and maybe it's mental motion, whatever. But it's Mere Mortals in Motion.
Yeah, sweet.
And yes, so on that, if you're listening right now to the Mere Mortals podcast, it does come out as part of the Mere Mortals podcast channel. So I believe the first one going up on the Monday just gone by, so 21st of August. So that's kind of the first one with foundations. I've got a couple of other ones which are sort of going through to the rest of the episodes to come. So
Yeah. So I wanted to get
those new ones.
Well, we hinted at it in previous episodes, but I want you to explain fully what your plan is with those things, and then we can just get some thoughts on. It's kind of one of the first ones you've done a little bit independently. I know you've done book reviews, but even that was a format that I kind of already created. So this is definitely one that you've started up from start to finish. So just what's it about, and what have you noticed about doing it?
Yeah, I mean, some of the reasons as to why, if you've been a listener to the podcast, you might have heard me talking about wanting to do the Mere Mortals Web3 thing maybe a year and a bit ago.
Yes, yeah.
That didn't eventuate, and I put, not substantial effort, I'd say a few hours, 10 hours total in terms of thinking, creating some content, some videography, that sort of thing for it. And then it just didn't eventuate anywhere. Reasons for it, I'm not going to go into it now. But again, this idea of creating a piece that for large parts of it is for me. Like, it's a benefit for me in the grand scheme of things, 70% of it. And what it really is me really conversing to the camera, but hopefully to any mere mortal out there that's picking it up. It's me conversing through my foundational reasons as to why I, as a mere mortal in motion, how I go about it, what a phase look like, so a phased approach, and then me talking through a particular phase as a structure, and then just a week to week breakdown, which, to be frank, I've done one of them already. It will probably evolve over time as to how I present it, because more I believe what it's going to become is going to be me retrospecting on a week's training, things that sucked, things that didn't, especially with things that I'm either like an absolute noob at running, and going, hey, shit, I actually came into this sort of idea or thought. And even sometimes it'll be me, and this gets like, I guess, some value for value of the podcast and the conversation. It's me also asking, like, hey, I'm kind of running into this problem. Does anybody out there can help me out? Hey, please send this through. And that's going to be a lot of talent that can help me out. But all in all, Mere Mortals in Motion is basically me, and whether yourself or even any other people want to jump in to kind of support that particular stream of conversation or thought, is showcasing the idea of foundational work into phases, into week by week retrospective on my own training. So at the very start, that's basically what's going to be for the Mere Mortalites out there.
Yeah, so this is touching upon one thing which I was reflecting upon, which was, and you mentioned it, that 60 or 70% of it's for you, and this is where I was going, like, okay, this is where I think one thing that we are struggling with the value for value is we probably don't spend enough time thinking about how we're really coming across and exactly what people get out from listening to us. And this is where I was going, like, I think we're probably a bit too selfish, to be honest. So in particular, I was thinking, for the book reviews, why did I start that off? Well, it was a way for me to almost replace my own recordings that I was doing of, journaling and writing them down physically. It was like, okay, there's a medium where I can do it as a podcast, and maybe some other people get some benefit from it, but a large portion of it was for me. And I think we've done some good things with with the Mere Mortals, but it is finding that line between doing something that's selfish and that we really enjoy, and actually creating something which is helpful for other people. Now, whether that be entertainment wise, whether it be informational, whether it be from just a pure watching point, that's up for debate. But it's probably one thing. I don't know. What do you think? Do you think we spend enough time thinking about how it comes across? Like, for example, I listen to a lot of our episodes, most of them. But do you do that, for example, and when someone's like listening new, trying to see with fresh eyes how we come across?
I wouldn't say that I'd spend that much time re-listening to a lot of our own content, apart from the fact that when we edit them or listening to prior podcasts, maybe it'd be rarely. But and this gets into the point of content of, and I guess we're talking about creation of digital content, because, and we've talked about it in the past in other streams, of creating content for the sake of creating content so that it benefits, one, algorithms, two, genuinely helping out people out there, which I guess we, from a value for value perspective, us getting value back in return through those is kind of proof to be like, hey, that's actually valuable to people. Hey, we're orientated that way. But right now we don't get enough in the value for value model to kind of discern whether we're even doing that correctly or not. Like we'll get a scattering of support, but it's not enough to be like indicative of how, hey, actually, yes, we should be doing this or we shouldn't be doing this. So I probably couldn't comment any further on that. One of the aspects of going down the
yeah, I've got some thoughts on that, but sorry, keep going.
Well, and that's what I was sort of thinking for the mere models in motion. Again, largely, and why I decided to go down the path of that piece as a new content piece, and yes, it takes time to do, is because I went, hey, for a large part of this, I'm already doing like this is when I say it's beneficial, or at least it's benefiting me in terms of 60, 70, 80%, it's whether I'm speaking about it or not, it's getting done no matter what. As in, I'm tracking it through, I'm writing down the daily notes, I'm reflecting on what worked, what didn't, I'm already putting these comments. It doesn't take that much extra work comparatively, like we're doing these podcasts. It doesn't take that much extra work to put it into some thoughts, talk about it, talk about the subject. If we were to talk about, again, I've been listening to Dan Carlin's The Horrible Histories. Can't remember what the title of this. Hardcore Histories. I've been listening to the Supernova of the East, the 5-parter. I think it's 5 parts, where each one is 4-hour podcast, 5-hour podcast, and they're like huge and detailed and amazing. And I go, if we're trying to put together such expertise and such level of skill set in a podcast form or a content form, I go, okay, well, that requires a lot of effort, and it's not necessarily as beneficial to me as it's probably be in what you're trying to convey. You're almost trying to teach history and information. That would be a very, very different topic. So for the mere models in motion, I went, well, the content I'm trying to create here is to benefit somebody else. And, I've seen this and I guess this is very much an experiment, because I called it out in one of the episodes. I went, I think it's one of them to come. I'm going to see how long I do it for. If I find, again, we've talked about this in other forms, and you have to kind of do this mere mortal lights with content pieces. Try a certain amount and then assess, because I might find that I do 8 episodes or 10 episodes and I go, okay, it's genuinely taking me a few hours each week to go and create this and put it together as a content piece. If no one's absorbing this and no one cares about it, well, why am I, like, obviously it doesn't seem like anyone wants to uptake this for the time being. Awesome. And then I'll just continue to do 80% of the effort, 70% of the effort, which is my own tracking and my own personal notes about it all.
Yeah. So a couple of things from that. One was you mentioned one of my pet peeves: content for content's sake. I hate that. I hate that with such a passion. And it's kind of like the same as growth for growth's sake. And I'm working on gradually figuring out why I hate those so much. But I think it's like fundamentally tied to just some like really bad logical reasoning. But anyway, that's for future to come. Just because you're doing something for 70% already, this is one of those things where I go, just because of it kind of fits in with your lifestyle to create something, and then it's only an extra little bit of effort to create it. That's where I kind of go, that's not necessarily a bad thing, but it is probably by default not going to be as valuable as something where you go out with a specific purpose to help or to educate or to create something for other people, where it is, you're already 70% doing it for yourself. So just for an example, the Value for Value podcast, the first season was very much, I was creating it for myself. I was trying to just get thoughts out of my head of, okay, this is kind of the things that value for value means. Free isn't free. You want to compare it to like tipping or donations. It's not so great with that. And it kind of had this cumulative build up to when I interviewed Adam Curry, and it was like, oh man, that was really great prep for that. The season 2, I started doing more analyzing. This was kind of like a half thing, because half of it was being able to showcase other people's shows, so kind of giving a platform of reviewing other shows, so it was helpful for them. And then the one that I'm doing right now is really me. I already know all of these things. Like I didn't need to, for today's episode, for example, what did I title it? It was like value for how to access value for value music, and then like the hurdles and to supporting musicians and creators, or musicians and artists. I didn't need to do that. I knew all of that stuff already. I'd played around with it, and it was purely this is to help out other people ordered it from easiest to hardest, things to check out. These are the different shows you can do. It was really like the basic beginner how-to sort of thing. And it immediately, it's already outperforming, if you want to put it in those terms, a bunch of other videos that we'd create. And that was one where I went, okay, well, this is obviously where I'm trying to help other people. And I took extra steps by recording it for video, which I don't normally do for that episode, that show. And so I was going like, okay, yeah, this is where I can see that kind of payoff, where it is really crafted for an audience. This isn't me doing it just because I'm already doing it. This is like 100% effort on my part to create something for that is valuable for other people. So yeah, it's not like a stab at you or at me, because I've done the same thing. But it was definitely just like, okay, if it's like you're already doing it 80%, if that's the reasoning you're coming in for it, it's probably worth just analyzing, okay, how valuable is this going to be to other people? Because just because you're doing it for yourself, I'm sure there's people who do all sorts of things that are valuable for themselves, but I would have zero fucking care about. And if they just spent that extra 10% effort to record it, I would still have zero care about. So yeah, it was just one of those things, like a moment of reflection for me today when that happened, and I went, oh, okay, I can kind of see the difference here.
Yeah, I mean, two points of sort of like that you made mention though, because it was interesting. So I guess for you with the value for value, and I guess we're talking through here around content creation, and we very much, again, we sometimes get meta with this because we are doing content creation in its very simplicity of the definition. But when you're talking about the value for value, and so you did that latest one where the payoff, you mentioned payoff, was essentially more views, really. Now, so to that end, I guess when you're talking about the value for value, when you're creating a piece of content, was your mindset the outcome that you're looking for is more listening, like more plays on the episode that you've created, or is it more dollars returned through the value for value system, or what? So when you say the payoff was greater than another one, like what do you mean exactly by that?
In this case, it was definitely the views were a reflection of it being shared by other people. And so sharing was kind of, and I could see this via Mastodon and via Twitter, X, whatever you want to call it. It was the sharing aspect of like, okay, other people are willing to repost this because it is an introductory guide. It is like that. So money wise, I don't know. I haven't checked. View wise, that's just a metric to kind of gauge like, oh, okay, people are actually watching it. So it was definitely I suppose this could get hijacked by the question of like what is valuable, what it is that we're actually aiming for. In this case, I would say I was aiming for something that I thought, okay, one, can this help promote value for value music, which I think is a good thing in of itself, and make it accessible to people who it wouldn't have been accessible to otherwise. And look, I only just produced it today, and America hasn't even really woken up yet. So we'll see. We'll see exactly what happens from it. But it was one of those ones where I was like you said, there's no point doing the mere mortals in motion if it's like 5 people watch it, you're not sure if those 5 people are bots or not, and no one responds to it in any form that you're asking them to respond in.
Yeah, and I think bringing it back to content creation, and I think underlying, and this is one aspect, when you're creating content, especially in the digital world, it's very important that you have in mind what is the end outcome that you're trying to, like, what are you deeming success? And yes, moving away from very superficial markers might be a good thing, but again, if superficiality is what you're looking for, or that's what breeds success in other places, well then shit, go for it, right? Like if we were doing the Valley for Valley podcast and the Mere Mortals in Motion podcast because we wanted to grow our the ecosystem that we participate in by tenfold, and so we made a metric around that, well then shit, then you've got a metric around that, and that's what you're going to do. And then by and large you might go, how 6 months from now it's not doing that, right? Or in the dollars returned through the value for value system. No, okay, this is not a good ROI in terms of what we are getting from a dollar perspective versus the hours that we're putting in. At least specifically, so again, maybe a more internal example for the mere mortals in motion, even to the point where you said, like, well, if only 5 people are watching it, well, if they're bots, well, yeah, okay, that's useless. But one of the aspects, and I remember writing it down, was that if at least it helps 1 to 5 people out there in the essence of getting them in motion or answering a stupid question that they didn't want to ask, or similarly, if they're a mere mortal and it's encouraged to either help out another mere mortal, that to me is success. That to me would be like, okay, cool. That is what I wanted out of this particular one. Because, again, there's selfish reasons as to why I'm doing it. I am asking questions, and some of them being like, I think in week 1, this happened where I went for a 5K run with one of these shoes I've got for like it's an old set of shoes, dude, and they were really tightly tied, and my feet just went numb at like 4 kilometers. But it hasn't happened with other shoes, and I'm like, is it the shoe type? Is it the shoe size? Is it the oldness? Did I go too tight? You Google it and you find all those details. So it's like little questions which I'll ask like that, where honestly, if a runner's actually listening to this and going through it, hell, I would like to know. Like, give me some guidance. But maybe similarly, it's similar questions that maybe others haven't heard, haven't experienced, especially, when you see the, going from couch to a marathon or couch to 5 kilometers. I often see a lot of articles around that. But another one of the reasons I want to do it is I never see the minutia of like a week to week with the detail of training. Again, we'll see how that actually develops and how it created, because it can, as you say, it can become really boring. Who actually wants to check that? Maybe nobody. And then it's like, okay, well, let's rejig it. But I'll give myself enough time and getting to the payoff is, I would expect in a month or two to have, a couple of people either be benefited by it, listened to, viewed. Again, the foundations ones that I published, and I haven't even seen the audio numbers, but from a video perspective, I saw it got more than some of the ones we've been posting out lately. So I went, okay, maybe it's getting viewed, maybe it's the algo, who knows? Again, something that you'd have to go check. But one of the points I had around the content creation was, again, overwhelmingly so, there's going to be a foundation, a very clear foundation to how you are, why you are doing the things you're doing. Otherwise, you just get down to doing content for content's sake and just being driven by, if it's something relatively superficial, just following whatever the algo is going to tell you to do.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and it's kind of measuring that payoff is the hard bit, because what are the things that I have really enjoyed over the 4 years that we've done it. An email sent from a listener talking about how she kind of divulged a secret to us, which was related to just like identity and things like that, and it was kind of on prompting on our part. That was a really, really nice email to receive, because it was someone like opening up to us and was like, oh wow, that was we did have an impact. It was even though it's kind of like there's like good and bad variations of this. One time when we were out in South Bank, young lady Anisha came up to us and was like, guys, I love the stuff that you're putting out. I really enjoy it. That was really, really cool. And it was like knowing that someone's listening and that it matters. So there are those like kind of metrics which are halfway there, as in the view count, that if you're getting, I don't know, 10,000 views on the video, that's most likely not going to be all bots. And so it's a somewhat of a metric, like you were saying, to know if people are running or getting in motion in your case, which is what you're aiming for. But it's like trying to measure that is so hard, because getting feedback can be really, really hard.
And another aspect of it all, another flavor for, again, content creation is, what's the time domain that you're operating with in content, in creation of content? Take, for instance, I'm blanking on his name, Mr. Beast, right? A lot of the videos he creates, right, quite YouTube specific, really grand. He uses a lot of the money that he generates through YouTube ads to then go and create the very next one, and so on and so forth. And he's obviously really worked out what people / algorithms really want to be showing people so they can get consumed. And I think he posted just recently where he made a video and it became like the fastest or the most views in 7 days, and then he beat it again, and then he beat it again. And if you hear him talk in interviews, it's not like he's just doing it by fluke. He's very much, I guess, confident that if he had to begin basically from scratch, he could do it all over again. And look, there's probably a big truth around just becoming so focused in on being able to, the outcome being in a short time domain, get the most views you can, get the most entertainment out of people, right? So he's obviously worked out what that looks like. And I think people have probably listened to the Mere Mortalites enough, that is, of the Mere Mortals here, that we don't do that. Like, there's no way that I think, at least I can only speak for myself, but it kind of seems similar to you. We're not going to be doing some strategy sessions about what's the best podcast we can create that's going to be the best in terms of getting views and the most ad intake. We're not going to do that. And if you're listening to us,
in terms of any of those, how do you capture people within the first 30 seconds? What's the most optimal time limit for a podcast? What's the if there's retention's dropping off, how do you do that? We haven't looked at any of that. Perhaps the only bit is just making sure that we don't start off completely numb. And you've kind of seen over the years where we introduce ourselves, so you get our names and things. But to be honest, man, I was listening to one of the old episodes, and it was kind of refreshing that we just dived in at this random point of it was kind of refreshing to not actually have a structured intro. So I was like, damn it, you can't win.
Depends on the flavor. Sometimes you want a bit of a change up and whatever else. But
yeah,
so you got to be really confident when you're doing digital content creation around, well, what's your timeline? And now the more and more and more and more I think about it, and the more I do this, right, dude, in my mind, the sort of content I want to be create has always been slightly evergreen. Like we don't really particularly do very in the moment conversations, although we do, right? We talked about some news and things that are happening because whatever, we want to do that. But more and more is, hey, I want to talk about topics or ideas that are more evergreen, that can going to be consistent, so that maybe in 5 years' time, there's something that people are going to re-listen to. Good, that's one aspect. But honestly, the way I'm creating some content now, there's differentiation. Some of the content that I'm creating, I want it to be a very long-lasting ones. So Mere Mortals in Motion, I would hope that it could be a much more long-lasting piece, although things could change. But I'm also thinking in the way that I continue to create content through the Mere Mortals, through whatever else I do, is going to be very long-lasting. AKA, I need to be putting together systems in place so that we're not burning out. I'm burning out. And it's also like, oh yeah, I'd imagine doing a podcast, with my daughter, in terms of just like having conversations, doing like round tables, Smithsonian style conversations. Dude, that's
what the hell does that mean?
15 years away. I think it's
where
you basically have a couple of people and you talk about a topic, but you can only go one at a time, so you're not over speaking to one another. Gotcha. I think it's called Smithsonian ones.
Okay.
And in any case, so I'm thinking creating a content around this like 15 years in the future. So, we're talking longer than what some of the social media platforms have existed in, almost, kind of. So I go, I'm fine. I'm fine playing the very long game. And again, my outcomes to content creation or creation of content like this, or although maybe more rarely some of the clips or things like that, is cool. What's something that I can probably reflect back on 10 years time, and hopefully Mere Mortalites out there can still be listening to, or will reflect back and be like, okay, cool, that's still evergreen. It's something that it's still a thought that can sort of portray and go through. It kind of reminds me, and again, this is me getting older, and so now starting to shift away with some of the mentalities that I might have towards, I guess, like a Karen-esque mentality, where I'm starting to find a little bit of joy in older books. And I go, just finished reading Zen and the Art of Motorcycle Maintenance, and the digs that he had on Greek philosophy and the disagreement with Plato and Aristotle. And I went, this was a really good read. Like, this was a fun read. I guess that is content. A very, very well thought out, well written piece of content. Obviously, in a book format, depends on content can come in very different formats. I went, yeah, maybe I really enjoy that. Maybe I need to get stuck into other books that are of older ages, which have withstood the test of time, but have perhaps content that I want to consume in that particular manner. So yeah, you can also diversify, but of course we're talking about digital content. So I almost want to create, I'm really trying to create digital content which is going to last hopefully many years into the future. But that's a fine balance, because of course you don't want it to be 2 views for 200 years and then all of a sudden it just strikes gold and then everyone's watching it. But doesn't matter at that point. I don't know.
Yeah. I'm struggling to think of a book or piece of art that really ignites like that. I mean, there's some sort of things, but yeah, like a piece of digital. I mean, there are some digital content, some old YouTube videos which it was talking about a topic which no one cared about, and then like 20 years later, it's like, oh shit, and it kicks off. But yeah, it's
Well,
pretty
I'll
rare.
give you an example.
Pretty
I'll give you
rare.
an example which I know for myself, the episodes that Jocko Willink did with the SOG personnel who were in Vietnam and who were in the special forces, the very secretive special forces that they did. I forget the guy's names, because there was a few that they did, and there was like 4 with one guy, 2 with another. Those, to me at least, are like, obviously there's a personal preference, but I go, man, I would re-listen to some of those into the far future for certain, just because, I mean, they're referring to history, they're referring to what seems, it's almost like listening to like, and it's an action movie but in a podcast, honestly, and there's a lot of learnings throughout. And I went, yeah, that's the sort of stuff I could get behind re-listening to even far into the future. And I've even thought, oh man, would I re-listen to some of this? Dan Carlin's, you know, I listened to 2 of those episodes, not the full series. And I went, oh, I remember I really enjoyed it, but I don't know why it tailed off. And I'm going back and re-listening to it and be like, oh yeah, this is good. So I don't know. I think you can create it, but it can be very hard.
Yeah, for sure. Well, we were talking about value before, so let's jump into the Boostergram Lounge. While one is bringing up the Discord and the messages, I will just say that I know there was a bit of stuffing up with the Satoshi stream, so the bot was down for a little bit, so I had to just kind of manually post 1 or 2 things into our section there. The Boostergram Lounge, for those who are wondering what that is. This is a value for value podcast. We do try and create things which we think are of value, and I'll touch more upon that in the next section. And we just asked, we do that free of charge. Tune in as much or as little as you want. You don't have to respond to us ever. But how are we to know if it is valuable? The only way we can know, indeed, is if you send some value back to us. So the Boostergram Lounge is a particular way where you can do that within the podcasting app of your choice. If you've got a good one, a new podcasting app. So this is one where you'll get things like chapters, transcripts, links, images, all sorts of stuff in a better experience. And you can send us a message directly within the app, so you don't have to go elsewhere, click on other things. So good ones to try out are Fountain, Podverse, Cast-O-Matic, Podcast Guru. All of those are decent ones, and we've got some boosts in one. What did we have? So actually, I'll read out the first one, which I know it came in, but it got missed, which would be Dave Jones's regular weekly boost for the Mortal Light Nation, 12,112, a big rush boost. Thank you very much, Dave, for that.
Dependable. And the only other one, and maybe I'm not getting them through, but I've only got one more. Which is one that
I think it was only one this week.
Peter. And that was sounds interesting. We'll check this out. And I'm not too sure
that was
what podcast
that was for your one. That was for your one.
Gotcha.
I checked that. Yeah.
And unsure how much stats that was.
Yeah, that just multiply that whatever that was by 10. Did
gotcha.
I put the?
So that was 1,000 stats sent by Peter there.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, so there was actually just checking. Yeah, okay. All the other stuff I have is for the value for value. Yeah, once again, this is where it's like we're still relying on a couple of just individual things which can break, and so in this case they did break this week. So if we missed anything, apologies. But I think it was just one of those weeks where it was a little bit less. So that's all right. I want to talk about, I suppose, maybe just some general strategy of what I've been thinking about with digital content creation, and particularly the moving forward aspect. So one thing I would say is, you reach a point where there is like this experimental phase. You just got to try something and see if it works. So the book reviews, for example, we've been doing that for like 3 years now. It's been 3.5 years probably. And that was one where it was a good experiment, when we've done various things over the while. I did 2 books when I was first doing it at the start, so it would be like a back-to-back thing, and then we made it individual. We upped uh, the structure of it. We upped the cleanliness, the how we did it, how the length of it, the types of books we're reading, all that sort of stuff. And I would now say it's like, okay, I feel I've gotten to the point where I need to take a real deep look, a real restructure of it, and go, what are things that are actually helpful to people, and go over all of the old comments. What did they take out from these? What are things that people enjoyed? Because just straight up, the amount of time I was putting into it was not reflective of that payoff which I was looking for, which in this case was kind of sparking conversations, or getting messages of people who were like, I have also read this book, or I will read this book now, or won't read this book based on your recommendation. And so it definitely felt like I was just doing things without a real deep purpose of as to how this is going to help other people. So that's definitely one thing I'm going to really change around, and try altering the format, doing it more live. I still need to do a lot more research on other book review channels and see what they're doing, and how they try and do that. So yeah, that's just definitely one big one which I'm going to focus on a lot more. Have you got any thoughts on that one, on the book reviews?
Yeah, I was going to say, so sticking to the book review specifically, and I know you mentioned it in the live book review summary that you were doing. You were sort of saying at the very tail end as well that you were look to do it like for a few more months and weeks, and then see sort of what it kind of looks like in the structure.
I've got 3 more pages of my book on my of my note thing, and then I'm at the end. So there'll be 3 more, which are as usual 4, I guess, because I've already recorded one.
Yeah, and I think it's probably high time that. So, a couple of thoughts there is, yeah, as you said, been quite a few doing the book reviews. I've started to already sort of move away and try out different things, or experiment with the structure of the book reviews. Now, one aspect of, I just haven't done many book reviews at all the last couple of months, and so it kind of feels fresh-ish for me. So I don't do that many, and so it would be very different if I was creating more content pieces. But one thing that you correctly pointed out is that's one of those where, okay, for a time I was putting together Amazon link so if people wanted to go and purchase it, and then we would get referral payments back to us. None of that. I think there was one. I think there was actually one payment, and that
really?
was because you actually couldn't extract it out from Amazon until it hit a particular number. So I was like,
gotcha.
Who cares? And so I went, okay, well, I'll do that. For a time, I was doing the book reviews on the website, if you remember. So I was putting some notes around that as well. And that was like heaps of effort, again, to very, very little payoff. And here, payoff was actually people going to the website, interacting, going and leveraging that. Because at the time, the Mere Mortals book reviews was a much bigger channel than our normal Mere Mortals. And a big part of the conversation is, ultimately the Mere Mortals podcast is going to be the bigger one, the championing one. And I think the book review is kind of like an add-on. I go, yeah, I think I'm going to have to start changing the way I structure the book reviews for sure. Again, talking about content, I go, it may be similar to your mindset is I want to I'm moving more towards this mentality where, yes, you want to have a lot of content as much as possible because it does support, people getting eyeballs on you. But I want the content to be fairly high quality still. Like I don't want to be putting out just junk out to the masses for no particular reason, even if it gets a lot of views. One of the things I was actually playing around with was, I do a book review and I'm structuring it through being like, hey, here's a summary of the plot and good things you might take away and the bad things you might take away. I really need to, I think as you also will probably do, is kind of see how other people's do it. But I went, yeah, maybe, and this falls into the camp of quantity because you can clip it a lot, but quality is maybe I just focus on, my favorite quotes from the book, right? Which is easy to extract. Like there's barely any thinking through that because I already do that. Again, leveraging what I already do, and go, cool. Now I got my favorite quotes from the book, and I'll just talk through that. And as I go through those conversations of the quotes, I kind of extrapolate into the idea of the book or the plot of the book and give some examples in the ways that we do here, right? And I go, That's at least me. That's where I'm most powerful, where I've got a few notes and then I just go off on whatever different tangents. I can do that. I kind of shrink up, like I bottle up when I have almost like a very strict process to follow. And I go, yeah, I need to leverage that more because I know I can get both funner and probably better content out when it's in that manner.
Yeah. And I just in my meager lookings at things, I've seen so many variations. People doing 1 minute book reviews, people doing like these full on sessions with the authors. So they particularly go out and, they're getting the firsthand experience of what the author was trying to convey from it. They've got, thug notes. I don't know if you've seen that one. It's a pretty humorous YouTube one where it was like a guy acting like a real hood thug, and speaking like Amadeus, or like Macbeth came up to his homie and bam 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 plowed that, just like put a cap in his ass, and now he was, blah blah blah. So there are various different ways of doing it, and it gets, I guess, to the thing of how long to experiment versus the experimentation versus consistency. We're really good at the consistency part, or at least I am for sure. And the experimentation part is, I probably need to err on the side of trying out more experimental things. Like even just my initial reaction to you doing the mere mortals of motion was like, I don't think that should go into the normal feed. I think that should be its own thing. And maybe, but like yeah, sure, let's do 8 episodes of it first, and then make that call. So yeah, it's definitely one of those things where it's like you have to do both. You have to experiment and be consistent, and finding that balance is pretty fucking hard.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And again, with all as a broad base with digital content, I mean, if you're not creating, okay, if you're not doing, if you're just talking or ideating or strategizing, well, big fat shit, right? Doesn't do anything. So it makes me think that when we very first started the podcast, right? You could strategize till the cows come home around it, but digital creation requires you to create and also then post and publish and schedule and do whatever. And a lot of the times, I mean, if people are starting it for the first time, you're listening to this and you might want to start a podcast or a video or a movie, film, whatever. You kind of have to do it first of all, and then go through and post it and do some learnings. That's going to get you a big piece. A friend of mine, actually, he moved to Portugal from Australia. He moved to Portugal a few months ago, and he actually reached out to me because he was starting to do some web-based sort of sessions where he was trying to, basically he's in sales and trying to do some sales and add-ons, and it's in a health space and whatnot. And he actually reached out to me directly to be like, hey, actually, I'm running this webinars, and I know I've checked some of your videos and stuff you do with the podcast, and I know that you're pretty good at this stuff. Can you, watch this and give me some tips and feedbacks and stuff like that? And I went, that's kind of cool, right? But at another point, I went, he's actually very right in the sense that as I watched it, I went, man, there's a lot of stuff that we have picked up over our time now of 3.5 years of doing the podcast. Of yeah, shit, I can spot what things work or what things have, at least we've talked through or gone through and go, oh yeah, look, that's actually going to benefit you from I'm talking content creation stuff. This is actually going to benefit you in this way because 1, you can clip it. 2, you can do it in this way. 3, you can hook people into it much quicker. Now, it's weird because we don't exhibit that all that often in our podcasts. AKA, we're not trying to hook you in with a sale. We're not trying to be like, hey, coming up, this is the advertising that we could do. But I feel like we've both listened, talked to enough people and whatever, that we could strategize around it and do that. The fact that we don't do it doesn't mean that we probably haven't picked up a lot of that skill set already in our time.
Yeah. I was thinking about what you were mentioning about value, and what you said just then sparked some ideas about the ones that you gravitate towards, and also that balance, I guess, of being dictated by your audience, what you put out versus what you actually want to, and the way that you do it as well. So just in terms of the value thing, I think that's also one where probably it'd be good for us to have a bit more of a look at. Probably I'll have to do it after the book reviews because I just can't juggle like 10 things at once. But this very one, like the musings, the meanderings, I think that's where it could be like, all right, let's have a real look at the topic that we're going to do on the next week. What do we actually know about this thing, or is this an exploration just for ourselves? And if it's just an exploration for ourselves, we picked the topic of curiosity once. Is that something that we actually really know deeply? For me, it was probably not. And so I look at that episode and I'm like, yeah, that one, it probably could have gone by the wayside. Whereas something like the one I did on Bitcoin, value for value, and podcasting, and that overlap, that's one where it was like 100% I knew what I was doing. I prepped on that for like 3 years. So that's one aspect. The other one was I think you can already slightly notice it with us, and this is where I want to be careful of not getting too trapped with value for value. Is the more I looked at No Agenda and what Adam and John do, I can see how they changed a lot over those first 100 episodes to where they are now. And I'm only at probably like 67 in, and I'm not listening to all of them. I'm just kind of going through the show notes. But I can really see how the evolution will have gotten from them to sort of maximizing that value for value feedback. And so they did it by going to 2 shows. They did it by doing it, really focusing on the live aspect, by including the jingles and the gamification and all that sort of things. And you can look at that, and you can look at their show, and you can go, okay, well, that's a very unique show. They do it really well. How much of it do they actually really, really enjoy doing? Like if money and getting responses wasn't a consideration at all, would they have the jingles? Would they have these separate sections, like detailing about the meetups, and then detailing 2 separate value for value sections? And I go, there's probably a little bit of a trade-off there. I would say not that much, considering they've been doing it for like almost 20 years, or how many years have been now, like 16 years or something. You can't keep up doing something you hate for 16 years. So they obviously love it. But it was just going like, we're doing it live now because I was pressing you like, hey, we need to do it to be able to read out the boostergrams regularly week on week. Because the way we were doing it pre-recording, it was just too jumbled up, and I could see like, oh, okay, if you're listening and sending in a boost in, you're not getting a response back in adequate time for it to really connect the loop that is the value loop. So yeah, I don't know. Have you had any thoughts of like, have you been tempted to create something you probably wouldn't have created just for something you think will do better, or have we never even gotten to that stage?
Honestly, I don't think I've ever gotten to that stage. I don't think I've considered, besides maybe the very OG Me Immortal fitness things that we're doing, the fitness challenge. That maybe was probably a part of like, oh yeah, if we do this, and I remember strategizing and putting in notes like, oh, if I structure it this way and do this for maximization, things like the CrossFitorian one, although that was fun to do. So it was kind of my own fun, but it took a long time. So maybe there's a lot of those things where maybe those aspects, but in general, like in a percentage basis of everything else we create, it's very, very, very few. And I think one aspect which, maybe it's a question to you. So yeah, obviously think about it from a digital content creation. We're talking about content, and it very much depends on the platform that you're also talking about, right? Because if you're creating content for X, it's very different to your Facebook or your Meta products. And if you're actually paying for the advertising, it's also a different thing, right? Because if you're creating content for the fact of making a consumer go through to a a funnel of sales to get an actual purchase, that's a very different world than trying to articulate pieces of work through, like, say, a conversation we're having as a podcast for being an evergreen piece, because we're not actually trying to incite a sale. We're trying to incite conversation and, thought-provoking ideas. Very different, right? Content creation and very different. And so the platform that we're talking about a lot here, right, is Valley. And you'd probably get this mere mortalites is that Karen's much deeper in the whole of Valley than I am, right? Very much deeper. And I think one aspect of it is...
I just want to correct the platform's not value for value. The platform's more long form audio, but the method
I guess the idea of moving podcasting through maybe a more pure value for value model than the, say, current advertising model, something to that
like
effect.
Yeah,
right.
On a broad
I would
scale,
say, I still kind of go, it still feels, and there's again feeling, not any like true details on it. I know you put a bet around the 10 years about Spotify. It kind of feels like it's still 5-6 years away from general consumption and utilization. So I go, hey, it's good that we're in it, we're participating, there's some conversations about it, but I go, something within me says the gut feel is it is many years away from a commonplace conversation. The concept of a value being returned for the value being given, well, as a concept, like that can be discussed, and it's here and now, it's in the present, in the past, and the future. But the utilization of some of the platforms that allow that and a more commonality to the point that, hey, this is success because we're getting lots of viewerships and payments through that, years and years away. And I go, and that's kind of okay. And I guess that's probably some of the creation of content on my part. I go, I'm not optimizing for that, because what I care more is getting a quality, thought-provoking ideas, conversations. But I think you have a different view to that.
No, it's. I suppose the difference would be, there's a case study where you can see already. Well, it obviously doesn't matter about the podcasting 2.0 stuff. Like that's irrelevant to it, which is no agenda. They've done it for a decade through this listener supported model of value for value, which listener supported. As I was kind of saying in our Discord, there's a spectrum where going from full on ad tilts to the top end of like just disgusting ads being chucked in your podcast, going down to like host reads, going down to sponsorships, going down to you owning a business and the podcast is somewhat of like a business opportunity sort of deal, to listener supported via like a paywall type mechanism, something like buy me a coffee, and then I'd put value for value like right at the end of that, as in the most freest sort of version. So I wouldn't say it's necessarily the aspect of doing it easily, and for anyone of our size being able to get close to creating something which is or receiving back close to something which is especially a value of like monetary, that'll take a while. Yeah, for sure, 100%. But I think it can be done even regardless of. For us, it's more about a size thing than anything else. Like I just don't think we have a large enough audience to have seen the benefits of with the PayPal, for example. I forgot to check it today. I'll do it a little bit later. So yeah. In that case, yes, but it's. I would say like the problem with our value for value at the moment is we just don't have enough. Like not enough people are tuning in, so it's like we need to increase our value of the product that we're creating more than anything else.
Yeah, I think I think I disagree with that view.
Okay,
I think that for in content creation, yeah. So when you get into the view of like a content piece, and so when you're talking a creation, a clip, a video, or whatever, you're putting something out that's content and digital content, right? If you're putting a very high dollar ticket value content piece and you get 10 people to purchase it, right? There's like a sales buying thing. Well, that might be success to you, right? You only need to have it in front of 50 people's faces and have 10 of them, go for it and get it. Maybe you only need, put it in front of 100,000 faces and 10 of them get it, and that's enough, right? The 10 you get the high ticket item, that's good. All of your digital content creation actually secured that piece. Just because if it has, so I guess what you're saying from the value that we're putting forward is not enough for the consumption that's there. I guess I kind of view it would be if the audience participating in the podcasting 2.0 space would be larger. I think I sort of said this to you before. So it depends on the platforms that you're playing around with, right? So if you look at a content creation piece that's for a meta product where you have billions of people on it and you can target people. Again, there's more of like an ad-based thing. But then your content is more likely to get picked up, viewed, used, channeled through to do whatever you want it to do. The numbers that you're playing around with in podcasting 2.0 is smaller relative to the other platforms. And you could become a relatively larger fish in a smaller pond, but you are a large fish in a smaller pond. And unless the pond gets bigger, well, increasing your value can only increase the value of a smaller pond, right?
Yeah.
So
once again,
and that's not to say that it can't be successful, and that we can't be more valuable to even the audience that still listens to us, because that's a very key differentiation. But I think it has to be separated to the point of, if you were given advice of someone out there of, if the piece of content you're creating isn't doing that well, it's because it should be you should be providing more value. I would agree. There's parts of that I agree, but not entirely. So I would say there would also have to be questions of, well, in what pond, in what size are you operating in?
Well, yeah, I disagree with that, because that's where I go, this isn't a podcasting 2.0 show. This is just a podcast. And so everything that we create, it's you consume it pretty much the same on Spotify as you do on Fountain. And there's when we create this, for example, I don't create it to be optimized on Fountain. Sure, I put in like chapters and things like that, but I was doing that on Spotify before I was doing that for Fountain, for example. And you can go back to, like, I don't know what it was, like episode 50 or something, where I found out, if you put it in brackets, it is linkable in Spotify for you to be able to click things. So I would say it's more, even though there's one of the kind of misconceptions I think that comes up with value for value, is that it's something related to podcasting, or value for value is only it's only value for value if you do it through Bitcoin. I don't think that's the right way of viewing it. So if it was like, what I would just say is, like, the show that we're creating at the moment, it's the same on Spotify or Apple as it is on any of those podcasting 2.0 apps.
Well, not entirely, because I think you were saying that you've stopped to do certain details on, say, Spotify that now appear on other platforms. Or if I got that wrong?
No, it should be the same.
Wasn't there chapters or something like that you were saying that was slightly different in some of our podcasts?
Well, I still do that. I still put in, you'll see in the show notes, the brackets, which so like I do it so that it works on YouTube and in Spotify and in some of the other ones. And that's what I mean. Like I'm still doing stuff which is optimized more for Spotify. Now, am I going and putting videos up on Spotify, which I could do? No, because like that's not podcasting anymore. That's creating a Spotify show, which is I don't want to do that. I could do the same thing for like fucking Podchaser if I wanted, but yeah, that's slightly irrelevant, I guess. Yeah. Anyway, I think that's getting like slightly off the point which I was trying to convey, which was more if there's any like qualms about value for us and why it's not working, I'd put it more down to we need to make a better show for it to work. And then it's like, look, if that required us to fucking put jingles in and things like that, that's not going to happen. I don't think either of us wants to put jingles in. So if that was what was like really holding us back, it's like, okay, well, obviously this has a limitation then, because that's not something we're going to do. But I suppose one of the things was, for me, like when I think of content creation, it's what's the biggest payoff for me. Or the thing that I enjoy doing the most, that I feel I'm the best at, is long form audio. So there's no point in me creating short clips. There's no point in me creating a pod news type daily podcast of 5 minutes on here's the, whether it be related to books or fitness or any other things that I really enjoy. So that is kind of the, I suppose, like North Star of what I personally see myself doing in 10, 15 years would I see myself doing video? Not necessarily. And I think the video experiment that we did was good, only if to negate the fact it could have been like, what if we had done video from the start? But I see some people's YouTube podcasts, and they put in such an extreme amount of effort into the quality. Check out Chris Williamson, for example, and some of his recent ones, where I just go like, I don't want to become a videographer or deal with any of that sort of bullshit. That seems like way too much.
Where I think I probably lean towards in a content creation, and I sort of noted down that I like the quality creation of pieces. Like I can appreciate a really well crafted video with shifts in cameras and usage. But I know myself whether it's a long form or a short form. Like I can appreciate it. It's not to say that I'm good at it.
Yeah, exactly.
Right? It's fun to do it. It's fun to do. But that's not our strong points, right? We're not videographers, cinematographers, creators. We can do it, but it isn't our strong point, right? And I don't think it'll ever get to the point that I'll be like, oh, I want to invest that much extra time to become that. I won't. And so realistically, in 10, 15 years' time, what I would want to be doing is still similar long form content, conversations, ideations, philosophizing, and then having a team that allows me to just create it and do a lot of the what we're talking about content creation and knowing where your strong points in. So, like, I know in myself, the content creation strong point of mine is creating the fucking goddamn content by way of articulating and talking about it and talking to a particular idea and doing it freeform, not doing it through a structure, right? Yeah, if you would say, hey, you've got 12 minutes and you need to put a synopsis and a themes and a summary, and it's going to be this, forget it. It's going to be shit. It's going to be crap. Won't work. Tried it out already. Didn't work. Didn't
well, I appeared on Pod News Weekly, and James has a very strict structure. I saw him creating the notes. I had literal lines to read off to ask him, to prompt him to talk about news stories and things like that. Like that is such an extreme level compared to what we want to do, that it wouldn't work. It would feel too structured. It would feel too restrictive.
It's crafted.
Yeah.
But again, look towards Mere Mortalites. What is your strong point? Because some people out there might be a strong point, right? It might be a reading out almost news anchor style, reading through the news and then giving your view. That might be a thing. Fucking fantastic. And create a clip, and you might be good at editing. Awesome. We are either slightly past a generation where we're really good at creating, social clips on our phones. I'm not even good at that, right? I would not trust my life in Karen creating a TikTok video clip of his phone.
I was going to ask you just what your general thoughts on things that you would create for social media and short form. What are your general thoughts on that?
Again, the more I can outsource, at least the creation of them and done well, awesome, right? You're capturing a lot of audience very quickly. Again, where are the eyeballs? The eyeballs are there. You want to be creating things in there. But I know personally, I just don't necessarily enjoy creating it. I'm not necessarily good at creating it. So once again, I can do the talking or put the idea forward. I'm good at ideating what it should look like, but not executing on that actual piece. So again, looking to get a person who would do that for us, that'd be awesome for me. Because I go, hey, being good across the social platforms and future platforms, which will, utilize probably new ideas and new forms of communication, will be fantastic, because the concepts and the ideas don't necessarily change over time. They either get refined or said in different ways or elaborated differently, but the consumption of that media or the content does change, right? From a digital content perspective, whether it's a webinar, a 1-minute TikTok, a 3-minute video, a 20-minute blog, a 1-hour podcast like we're doing. Again, the content can be generally the same, just consumed in different ways.
Yeah. For me, I was going, well, obviously I can be a TikTok star if I want to. I just choose not to. But no, obviously for me, it's like for short posting, I only have for short posting, for short things, for small things that are less than 5 minutes long, I only ever seeing it being as promotional, and anything that is being put on social media, also the same for me. I have no interest in creating a digital communication via text. That is exceedingly boring for me. So the only things that I really see myself doing are if it's collaborative and can kind of be outsourced to other people. I.e., today, with that value for value episode, which I did on value for value music and the how to, I put a toast up on Twitter and I tagged like 9 people, all of which who I've referenced in there: Wavelake, Adam Curry, a bunch of the podcasting apps, etc., etc. And then it's kind of like, okay, they can do the the outsourcing to me of spreading that, because I'm not going to put in the time required to build up a big following anywhere, because I don't enjoy doing that. And so the only place I can see myself creating something that is non-promotional is if it's no, even then I'm not going to create something just for the sake of it being a short thing. So uh, it's only going to be clips, and only them, because they have a chance of going viral on their own without you having to do anything.
Yeah, but I think so, and I get where you're coming from, but in terms of generalizing it, be very aware, folks. We're talking about our podcast and a podcast, right? It's a very acute interpretation of digital creation. Again, if you're doing digital content for a variety of different things,
Oh yeah.
then it's very different, because as you were talking to that, it's like, oh well, for the podcast, well, absolutely not. I get it, dude. For the business we're thinking about buying, absolutely, that's fantastic. They don't do enough of it. I've looked into the business; they're not doing enough. I could see how hiring a person to do this and put the strategy together would actually be super beneficial to, again, go through the sales funnel, etc. Get the people in, because there's a payoff, which is X, getting more people through the doors and getting more money. But these are very slightly different things. So when you're talking about digital content creation, I think, and I'll loop back to the beginning, I guess this is my little summary of it. You need to know what your payoff is. What is the outcome? What are you optimizing for? Because again, if you're talking through and being a bit airy fairy about it, and you're creating content because the platform just exists, well, you're better than worthless. You're doing something. So immortalized, well done. But again, you just starting to put hours in, and with the amount of podcasts that we do, and again, we're going back to podcasts, we could be creating like 100, 20, 50 clips of each thing that we're doing, and spending hours and hours and hours at a time to do so, in the hope that one hits the algorithm. Is that of supreme value to us, really, to what we're optimizing for? I still kind of go, no, not really. One of the things we use, which we're kind of using right now, Riverside, when we're actually creating these pieces of content, I've gone back to Be Immortals in Motion. I've just been letting it use the AI to create the clips, and then I'll go and clip from that clip what I want to do, because it's doing the transcript automatically. It's putting it together as I wanted. That's it. If it gets picked up, awesome. But it's at least trying to pick up content which I've just gone and articulated. Right? I'm not putting the effort, and this goes back to things that we've discussed is there's kind of like the first layer where you have to create content to be able to create clips of content, like micronized content. But then you get to a point where you've got like an abundance of content. We have hundreds, thousands of hours of content that we could go and play back and do different clips with, or whatever. Are we going to go do that really ourselves? Probably not. Is there a lot of good stuff that we could reshare? Probably, right? You see a lot of big podcasts out there, Sam Harris, Tom Bilyeu. They'll go and repost things from 2018, 2019. They'll get people to splice together when they've talked about AI, or when they've talked about machine learning, or when they've talked about Google, whatever. Someone could go and do that for us as well. That could be a cool piece of content. But again, it's again, what are we optimizing for? That's not what we're doing right now, nor is what we enjoy. So I think people need to be very aware that in digital content, there's kind of a little bit of a hill where you have to create content in some other way, and just doing is much better. And then, at least for me, then it gets to a point where, okay, now you start, at least for me, you got to just care about the quality, unless the digital content creation is very directly tied to the way that you're funding what you do, because nobody's just doing things for free unless you're uberly wealthy and just doing it for an absolute hobby.
Yeah, and that's what I think. Like like I said, digital long form audio, is that going to play well on the current apps that are out there? On Twitter, on Instagram, no. On Facebook, probably not. No, really, all of them at the moment have this kind of visual component to it. So,
well, it's interesting you mentioned X because I know that they are moving towards that long form video and payments through that format as well.
Yeah, but that's not great for long form audio. So, a Twitter Spaces, I guess, maybe. But in any case, it's kind of like, I suppose when I think of it, it's like, yeah, there's that one thing I care about. All that other stuff, yeah, sure. If it can get automated, that's 100% brilliant, and all of that is only to be used as kind of a little gateway entry for someone to find the stuff that I actually care about doing, which is the long form audio. So, for me, if you were having to say what are those payoffs that I would be looking for, it would be creating it so that I could go to the United States and meet Adam Curry face to face and actually be able to shake his hand and be like, holy shit, it's the Podfather and Dave Jones or a whole bunch of other people. That's a huge payoff for me of someone coming up to me perhaps and during the daytime and saying like, wow, you really influenced me. You really helped me on this particular thing. Another thing, the money stuff, I would love to be able to create a lifestyle and income that allowed me to live from it. But once again, this is like, I don't know if that's possible for me. Maybe with long form audio, it's not. I think it is, but that's kind of like the journey, I guess, that we're on. So just in summary for me, if you create things, it's worth thinking long and hard about what you're doing and how you're doing it and how you feel about it. I just watched Chris Williamson talking to Sam Harris, and it was a YouTube video. Fantastic quality of the video, like it's like a video masterpiece. The lighting, all of that sort of stuff. He had 3 disgusting ad breaks within the video, no chapters that let you skip around it, so you don't know when it's coming. And I just went, what an absolute fucking jarring way to screw up something that is really good. And I'm only like an hour and a half in, and there's been 3, so there's probably like another 2 more to come.
Now, look, caveat, folks. Caveat: this is Kyron versus maybe the usual advertising. I listened to and watched that, like part and partly. I listened to some of it, watched some of it. Didn't even care about the ads. I just skipped through, kept watching.
But you still skipped through, right? So it was obviously
absolutely
not...
skipped through. But I guess I didn't have the reaction of like, oh man, what the hell? This is like absolute dog shit. I guess in the length of time, I was like, meh, that's fine.
And look, yeah, for some people that's okay. For me, I that's not okay. That's close to being like, I don't know if I'll bother watching or listening to any of his stuff again if that's the experience that I get from it. But that's kind of just for me. So if he is okay with that, that's cool. If I had created something like that, I would personally like be wanting to slip my wrists and just being like, wow, that's what a piece of shit I've created. What about new type of things in the future? I don't know, if there's AI ones or if there's visual ones that require 3D animation or that interpret our faces and do crazy things, if it's virtual reality, if it's augmented reality, all of that sort of stuff. I have no thoughts on at the moment. It would be, I seem to just be drawn to the ones where I feel like I can express myself the best, which is in long form audio. So if one of those eclipses that's awesome. But I haven't seen anything that makes me think that. And the last one was what about like non-digital creation? And you know what I really enjoyed recently? I enjoyed the process of handwriting a note to send off with the shirts that we did. The actual process of sending the shirt was shit. Going to the post office, having to write down all my stuff, only for her to then go from my writing and put it into a digital computer. And I'm just like, are you fucking out of your mind? Is this not the stupidest thing that I've just seen? And I've done that 3 times over the past month. That was not fun. But the actual process of writing the note, of crafting something of that made sense to the people and expressing some gratitude, I really enjoyed that. So that was one where I'm like, okay, there's still hope for me in the non-digital world as well, in terms of creating something. So
yeah, Fair, good point. There's aspects of, we're talking about digital creation. I would sort of say, non-digitally at the moment I've been, and look, you can blend both worlds. Not that I've decided to share any of the little drawings that I've been doing over the past few weeks, but you can kind of blend the non-digital to the digital. Do things non-digitally, get them out into a digital world, but obviously like resharing it. You can do that sort of stuff. We didn't really talk about this, but there's very much the personal versus the public item of digital content and the sharing. And I think a lot of the non-digital content, if you will, that at least I have in my life is very much the private side of things. Everything obviously that I'm sharing is public, just gets published out. But I also have content which is private. There's platforms and things that I have that I actually privatize, that you have to actually request to go into, to go and access. There's certain reasons for that as well. So you have to kind of blend both worlds. I kind of summarize well with digital creation. If you're just beginning, it's all about just doing, not about talking. Just do it. Doesn't even matter if nobody's watching, nobody's looking at it. Create. That's really the only way that you're going to know both two things: one, how the market reacts, and two, how you react, especially on what you're trying to optimize for. If you go and create a TikTok video for you're trying to sell, a back scratcher, and you get 300 million views, but you get 2 sales, and you're optimizing for the sale, well, hey, something's gone wrong on some other side. You learn from that. But as you get on with things, whether you're creating a platform or you're creating a culture or a team or an ecosystem or a brand, then it has to shift to, okay, well, there's got to be a balance between energy spent, which energy can conform to money, aka dollars that you're spending on a contractor, a consultant to create a videographer, a photographer, the apparel, the assets, right? All cost money, energy. So what's the balance between that and the creation of things, and how much of a quality perspective you also go between that? There's a bit of a balance. It's I guess a triangle in terms of quality, time, and the amount of things that you do. You kind of sometimes have to give up one of those. So when you're getting on with it, you have to kind of variate throughout that. And I think digital content creation for whoever you are out there goes through that phase. So if you're starting mere modelites, just do it. And if you're going through it and you're like kind of over the hump, then it's okay. Start to get picky. Figure out what you're actually focusing in on as being your outcome.
Definitely. Nice way to sum it up, Juan. Very good. All right, I'll finish this off here with just the constant reminder, I guess, that this is a value for value podcast. It doesn't mean that you can't access it on a non-podcasting 2.0 app. Of course you can. It doesn't mean that you have to pay us through Bitcoin. That you can do it through any other means if you want. But I suppose like one of the core aspects is I would love to know what value you get from listening to us. If you've been for a long while, or if you're a new listener, just reaching out via any of the mechanisms, tons of links in the show notes, whatever you're most comfortable via there, and seeing, I guess, like what other people are getting out from us, because it can be so hard at times to really truly get what we come across as. That's one thing I really struggle sometimes to try and appreciate. And this is where it's like, okay, I need other people to help me know what's a better way of doing
actually
things.
Here's one thing I just noted down as well as an idea, but I know a lot of the times we ask the questions right at the end of the podcast, and then I've tried to put myself in the shoes of listeners, right, and myself, the way I listen to. I honestly couldn't tell you the last podcast that I listened to it the whole way. Like I usually, even like a Jocko Willink or a few others, 10, 15 minutes before the end, that's it, done. I've done kind of the most of it. Cool, I'm moving on to something else.
Okay, well,
so
that's
if I was
one
listening
thing.
to the Mere Mortals podcast and I was listening to all this towards the tail end, I just wouldn't even listen to this. I just kind of cool. They're kind of like they're wrapping up. All right, off I go to do something else. Wondering if maybe there's a few questions, kind of how we do in the YouTube comments, where we're posing a question, whether we kind of begin kind of giving an idea around the content that we're going to be talking about, and maybe some of the key questions we want either asks from people or what we're going to be talking about, or that you can participate, right? So again, maybe it's that participation and where people participate on a podcast or content long form that we have to play around with. But again, there's just another example that you have to play around with what you're doing to see what works.
For sure. I don't know what the stats are, but I would have said if you made it through 75% of the way, it's very rare that someone drops off after that. But that's
100% for me. it's 100% that I will not make it to the end of your podcast.
Okay, yeah. Well, so that's one
I'm
version
the anomaly.
of me hating ads so much. So yeah, just keep that in mind. Anything else you wanted to talk about? I suppose just a little hint that next week we'll be talking about Bitcoin. So something we do know a fair bit about, and I'm actually looking forward to that. Kind of like a broad, open-ended. I'm not sure how it'll. We've got a wedding to go to this weekend, so I'm going to be definitely probably like tired and frazzled and doing all sorts of catch up when I come back. So yeah, that'll be just a more casual episode, I think.
For sure.
Cool,
All right,
cool,
Mere Mortals, we're going to leave it there. I think digital content, thank you very much for tuning in. Obviously, it's a very long form. And if you are listening all the way to the very end of this longer episode, I do thank you, appreciate you. And if you do want to participate in that value for value model of talent, time, treasure, make sure you do so. So you can share the podcast, you can send it through Boostgram, you can do many things, but reach out, contact us, because it is through those contacts that we kind of know that we're going the right path, or tell us if we're not. So for now,
mereMortalspodcast.com/support if you want to do that.
For now, Mere Mortals, I'm going to leave it there. Thank you very much for joining. One out.
Karen out. Bye. Good. Coolies. I can't even check the live stream comments because my YouTube thing is just like all screwing up. So I have no idea if it's still recording or not.
Good.
Yeah, like I'm just getting oh wait, here it is. It's popping up now. Cool. Good. All right, sweet. I'll end